Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever seen a motorcycle that looks like it escaped from a Bauhaus design sketch, sprinted into a wind tunnel, and came out wearing a monocle and a leather coat? A machine so far ahead of its time that even the experts at the pub nod quietly before offering totally false facts about it? Then let me introduce you to the 1928 Neander K500, a bike so stylish even your espresso gets intimidated. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button like you're shifting into first on a 1920s German motorcycle, carefully, confidently, and with mild fear. Here at Timmy Tiny Wheels, we bring you stories of glorious machines, forgotten marvels, and the occasional bolt that flies off during the ride. Stay tuned for the full dose of weird and wonderful engineering history. Now let's rewind to the golden, champagne-soaked twilight of the Weimar Republic. It was 1924 in Germany. Radios were jazzing, monocles were clicking, and the economy hadn't completely face-planted yet. Enter Ernst Neumann, an artist turned mechanical messiah, who rechristened himself Neumann-Neander because apparently being brilliant wasn't enough. He had to sound like a scientific formula, too. Neumann-Neander founded the Neander Motorfahrzeug Company in 1924, moving operations to Düren in 1926. This wasn't some greasy shop with wrenches and shouting. This was a visionary artist's lair, with engineers possibly wearing scarves indoors. By 1928, he unleashed the Neander K500, a 500 cubic centimeter sports motorcycle aimed squarely at sophisticated thrill seekers. It featured a radical pressed steel frame, sleek modernist curves, and a cushion-built overhead camshaft engine. Period advertising boasted it was the best handling machine in the world. A slogan Neander and later Opel splashed across their Motoclub campaigns. Neumann-Neander wasn't just an engineer, he was an inventor, an illustrator, and possibly a part-time wizard. He'd already earned an inventor's prize in Stuttgart by 1924, and when he introduced his patented Einheitsrahmen unified frame, jaws dropped. Most motorcycles then were built around tubular frames. He created a cadmium-plated pressed steel beam frame, stiff and elegant. It looked like it belonged in a museum, and in fact it now does. Opel, thoroughly impressed, licensed his frame design and launched the Motoclub, a K500 cousin that added sidecars, streamlined fenders, and a bit more corporate gloss. The K500 wasn't some mass-market scooter for pizza delivery. This was a boutique machine. Only a handful were built between 1928 and about 1930. In fact, out of the roughly 2,100 Neander bikes made in total, just a few dozen were K500s. The Great Depression soon slammed Germany's smaller luxury brands like a brick through a bakery window. Opel dropped the Motoclub by 1930, and Neumann-Neander himself closed up motorcycle production by 1939. The war came. The bikes vanished. And now, if you see a K500 in person, you take off your hat, or at least stop talking about yourself for a second. Let's get technical. The Neander K500 was powered by a 500 cubic centimeter four-stroke single-cylinder engine built by Küchen, a firm known for its overhead camshaft motors. The engine featured a 3-valve head, 2 intake valves and 1 exhaust, and a shaft-driven cam. Estimated power was in the 15 to 20 horsepower range, which back in the day was considered rather zippy, unless you were in a Zeppelin. The K500 used a 3-speed hand-change gearbox with a tank-mounted lever and chain final drive. Brakes were mechanical drums at both ends, good enough for the speeds but not ideal for panic stops or dodging sheep. The front fork? Not some crude pogo stick. Neander used unique pivoting forks with a spring box near the steering head. The rear was rigid, naturally. This was 1928, not a cloud ride. As for dimensions, weight came in around 120 to 140 kilograms, roughly 265 to 310 pounds. Wheels were wire-spoked, probably 19 or 21 inches, wrapped in skinny tires that gave you speed but punished your kidneys. Top speed? About 100 to 120 kilometers per hour, or 62 to 75 miles per hour, blazing fast for the time, and fast enough that your moustache needed aerodynamic grooming. Fuel consumption hovered around 4 to 5 liters per 100 kilometers, or 40 to 50 miles per gallon, frugal enough to make a modern eco-bike blush. And now the real magic, that frame. The spine of the Neander K500 was a marvel of industrial design, pressed steel, corrosion-resistant, elegant in profile. The egg-shaped fuel tank was smoothly integrated into the body, and the rider's saddle floated behind it like a punctuation mark in leather. The bike's silver finish and red accents gave it a sleek, modernist aura, equal parts speed and sculpture. A matching aerodynamic sidecar, dubbed the Pioneer, was offered, turning the bike into a torpedo for two. Even today, the K500's design feels like someone brought it from the future, someone with taste, a beret, and strong opinions about coffee. The K500's place in the market was peculiar, and I mean that as a compliment. It wasn't cheap, it wasn't mass-produced, and it wasn't meant for dusty trails or mud pits. This was for the well-heeled modernist who appreciated form and function, who read design magazines and wore his scarf just so. In its day, it competed not with lumbering British bikes or clunky French singles, but with ideals. Neander didn't sell bikes, he sold statements. Today, we see the ripple effect in collector markets. While most pre-war motorcycles sell to a niche crowd of piston heads and side valve whisperers, the K500 attracts a different breed. Design lovers, historians, those who appreciate a machine that feels as relevant in a museum as it does on the road. And unlike some hyped-up basket case barn finds, the K500's auction track record speaks for itself. At Bonham's in October 2019, a beautifully restored 1928 K500 sold for £34,500, which at the time converted to around $44,746, still the highest confirmed sale. Mecum Las Vegas in 2021 saw another one bring $40,700. Still, we lack original pricing. But context gives us clues. If the Opel Motoclub sat around 3,100 Reichsmarks and it was marketed as slightly more affordable, then we can safely place the K500 somewhere above that, perhaps in the 3,300 to 3,600 Reichsmark range. In today's currency, that's roughly equivalent to 15,000 to 17,000 euros, or about $17,000 to $18,000, inflation adjusted. So yes, it was expensive, but it was never about price, it was about presence. And what a presence! I believe the Neander K500 deserves a pedestal not just in motorcycle history, but in the larger story of human creativity. It's one of those rare machines that makes you stop scrolling, stop walking, stop talking. You stare, you admire, you wonder why more things aren't built like that. It was industrial art that happened to go 75 miles per hour. So what have we learned today, dear viewers? That genius comes in unexpected shapes. That motorcycles don't have to be loud to be powerful. That an eccentric German artist with a penchant for pressed steel and egg tanks can out-design an entire industry. And that sometimes the future is hiding in a forgotten museum corner. And here's a final tip from your old buddy Timmy. If a stranger at a cafe starts talking about his custom-built bike with aerodynamic flow geometry, just nod politely and ask if it's Neander. If he says no, sip your drink slowly and enjoy the fact that you now know more than the guy who's been into bikes since forever. Sometimes the best knowledge is the one you can quietly smirk about.